Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing my Ingrid sweater by PetiteKnit. So when the Ingrid sweater first came out, I wasn't very interested in it. It didn't really pique my fancy at all. But after seeing it so many times over the last couple of years on my feed, I just sort of somehow fell in love with it. And then I knew I needed to have one for myself. So I went with pretty much the traditional coloration, except obviously in a little bit more economically friendly yarns. So I'm using Drops Puna in the color taupe, and I held that with Drops Kid Silk in the colorway beige. I used just under 9 skeins of the Puna and about 5 skeins of the Kid Silk. So this Puna yarn is 100% alpaca. It has a really, really soft feel when you feel it put up like this and against your skin. But then when you knit up with it, it's not as soft as it feels just as a little ball. That's just something to keep an eye on. I have used this exact yarn and color previously in one of my sweaters. I have a bunch of it left in my stash because I was planning on doing sort of like a shaker stitch sweater or a broken ribbed sweater with it. But after, mulling it over for a while, I just decided that that wasn't really interesting to me. So I was going to go ahead and use it for this sweater instead. And I really like how it's turned out. I did a couple of modifications to the pattern. The first being the neckline. Of course, in the pattern, it has sort of like a mock neckline with a 2x2 and a 1x1 rib broken up by some eyelet stitches. I just didn't think that I particularly wanted something with mohair really high up on my neck. So I decided to just go for the classic 1x1 rib neckline instead. There's also instructions in the pattern for a folded one, but I just didn't feel like I wanted a folded one because sometimes those can look a little bit bulky. Other things that I changed is I shortened this mock cable panel down here. I think you're supposed to do the chart 2 times over, and I just did 1.5 times in the chart. I just was done with the mock cable stitches, and I felt like, from measuring things and knowing what I still had left to do, that I had enough length on it that it didn't really bother me. And I think it's fine because it did obviously stop exactly halfway through, so you still get those nice points on the bottom, even though I don't have quite as many diamonds as I'm supposed to have. I did lengthen the ribbing section on the arms just because I have long, monkey arms. So I think I did about 20 rows on the 2x2 and another 20 rows on the 1x1, which is significantly more than the pattern says to do. And I think that I really like how the length turned out. For me, that's kind of perfect. Where when I have my arms down, it comes just to my knuckles, but then when I'm up and working, it's sort of at my wrist. That's my ideal length of a sweater. I had read ahead of time that a lot of people got really stuck on the decreases on the arms, particularly in the mock cable section. I will say that they're tricky, but I didn't have too much trouble with it. And I think there's some things I would change if I had to do it over again, but this sort of center area here where I'm doing the decreases, I don't think it looks too bad. The biggest thing is just keeping track of what columns are disappearing with every decrease. And that means you're starting your chart further and further over. So this whole pattern was charted, which I kind of felt was unnecessary. I didn't really need charts for the moss stitch or the 2x2 rib. I think that could have just, been easily explained in text. But if you're somebody who really likes the visual learning of charts, it's all charted. A lot of people said that they enjoyed knitting this sweater because they felt like they were really motivated to get to the end of the next section and then to the next section and so on and so on. I kind of feel the opposite. I did not enjoy knitting it because I felt like every time I would get into my groove, it was time to change the texture. So it felt like it really slowed me down because right when I was getting good at doing, moss stitch, then it was time to change. And then I had re-teach my fingers what to do next. So in that sense, I didn't really enjoy knitting it, but I really, really enjoy the finished product. So I do have a lot of sweaters, or some sweaters, I should say, in my wardrobe where I enjoyed the process of making it. And then I have some sweaters where I just enjoy the finished product. And this is one of the ones where I enjoy the finished product, but I don't think I'd make it again because I didn't like the process of making it. In terms of construction, it's a pretty typical drop shoulder construction, working flat the front and the back, and then joining in the round for the rest of the body, and then picking up the sleeves and working in the round all the way down there. I will say I really liked the join on the shoulder here. It's almost invisible because you have moss stitch on either side, and then you do a line of the eyelet stitches. which, happens between almost every single texture change. So there's that line of eyelet stitches there, and that's actually where the shoulder seam is, but it kind of looks invisible because that pickup and then immediately doing the eyelets meant that like it sort of disguised the pickup or the seam. So I thought that was a really cool feature, and I think that the shoulders look really nice because of that. In terms of sizing, my measurements put me in a size medium in her patterns, but I do tend to find them very oversized. So I went for a size small instead, and I am plenty happy with the amount of positive ease that I have in this sweater. Like I said, I did shorten the body just a tad. But other than that, it was fine. And then my gauge was a little bit tighter than hers. I think this Puna, when you're working with it unblocked, it says it's a DK weight, but it's very, very thin. It's kind of closer to a light fingering, in my opinion. It doesn't really plump up to a DK until after you block it. So when you're knitting with it, it sort of knits like a much thinner gauge yarn. So that's just one thing to keep in mind if you're using that yarn from Drops. Some other interesting construction details on this. This is the same as the Marseille sweater, but it does have some short row shaping at the start of the sleeve. So you can see in this like 2x2 ribbing section that it's sort of like a wedge. And that's because there's extra rows using short rows on this side to sort of get it so you have them from balanced as it moves down to the wrist. So there are little details like that, which I think really help to make the fit on this sweater nice. And it's certainly a reason why I would choose to pay for a PetiteKnit pattern over using like a free pattern from Drops, because I think there are those little details that add in extra fitting that I like. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this look at my Ingrid sweater, and I'll see everyone next time. Take care.